Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin. I have no idea. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad. Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way. Whether it's Syria, no, you name it, missiles. Take a look at the startup that they signed.
Oh,
the Russians have said, according to
y'all, I thought for a second,
I can't believe they allow
we
us
could
to
have
do
a
this.
civil debate.
They create warheads, and we can't. The Russians can't believe
We
it.
can't.
She has been outsmarted by Putin, and all you have to do is look at the Middle East. They've taken over. We've spent $6 trillion. They've taken over the Middle East. She has been outsmarted and outplayed worse than anybody I've ever seen in any government whatsoever.
We're a long way away from their immigration, but I'm going to let you finish this topic.
Well,
You got about 45 seconds.
Yeah,
And she always will be.
I find it ironic that he's raising nuclear weapons. This is a person who has been very cavalier, even casual, about the use of nuclear weapons. He's advocated more countries getting them, Japan, Korea, even Saudi Arabia. He said, well, if we have them, why don't we use them, which I think is terrifying. But here's the deal. The bottom line on nuclear weapons is that when the president gives the order, it must be followed. There's about 4 minutes between the order being given and the people responsible for launching nuclear weapons to do so. And that's why 10 people who have had that awesome responsibility have come out and in an unprecedented way said they would not trust Donald Trump with the nuclear codes or to have his finger on the nuclear button.
I have 200 generals and admirals, 21 endorsing me, 21 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients. As far as Japan and other countries, we are being ripped off by everybody in the world. We're defending other countries. We are spending a fortune doing it. They have the bargain of the century. All I said is we have to renegotiate these agreements because our country cannot afford to defend Saudi Arabia, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and many other places. We cannot continue to afford. She took that as saying nuclear weapons. Look, she's been proven to be a liar on so many different ways. This is just another lie.
Well, I'm just quoting you. When
There's
we're
no
asked
quote.
about
You're
a
not going to find a
potential
quote from me.
nuclear competition in Asia, you said, go ahead, enjoy yourselves, folks. That kind
And
of
defend
language,
yourselves. And
the
defend
United
yourselves. I didn't
States
say
has
nuclear.
kept
And
the
defend
peace.
yourself.
The United States has kept the peace through our alliances. Donald wants to tear up our alliances. I think it makes the world safer, and frankly, it makes the United States safer. I would work with our allies in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and elsewhere. That's the only way we're going to be able to keep the peace.
We are going to move on to the next topic, which is the economy, and I hope we handle that as well as we did immigration. You also have very different ideas about how to get the economy growing faster. Secretary Clinton, in your plan, government plays a big role. You see more government spending, more entitlements, more tax credits, more tax penalties. Mr. Trump, you want to get government out with lower taxes and less regulation.
Yes.
We're going to drill down into this a little bit more, but in this overview, please explain to me why you believe that your plan will create more jobs and growth for this country and your opponent's plan will not. In this round, you go first, Secretary Clinton.
Well, I think when the middle class thrives, America thrives. And so my plan is based on growing the economy, giving middle class families many more opportunities. I want us to have the biggest jobs program since World War II, jobs in infrastructure and advanced manufacturing. I think we can compete with high-wage countries, and I believe we should. New jobs in clean energy, not only to fight climate change, which is a serious problem, but to create new opportunities and new businesses. I want us to do more to help small business. That's where 2/3 of the new jobs are going to come from. I want us to raise the national minimum wage because people who live in poverty should not, who work full-time should not still be in poverty. And I sure do want to make sure women get equal pay for the work we do. I feel strongly that we have to have an education system that starts with preschool and goes through college. That's why I want more technical education in high schools and in community colleges, real apprenticeships to prepare young people for the jobs of the future. I want to make college debt-free, and for families making less than $125,000, You will not get a tuition bill from a public college or university if the plan that I worked on with Bernie Sanders is enacted. And we're going to work hard to make sure that it is, because we are going to go where the money is. Most of the gains in the last years since the Great Recession have gone to the very top. So we are going to have the wealthy pay their fair share. We're going to have corporations
And this is
make
why
a contribution
there's a
greater
problem.
than they are now to our country. That is a plan that has been
What
analyzed
she
by
just
independent
said
experts, which said that
is the problem
it could produce
for
10 million new jobs. By
I'm not gonna go
contrast,
there.
Donald's
I'm not
plan
gonna
has
go there.
been analyzed to conclude it might lose 3.5 million jobs. Why? Because his whole plan is to cut taxes, to give the biggest tax breaks ever to the wealthy and to corporations, adding $20 trillion to our debt and causing the kind of dislocation that we have seen before, because it truly will be trickle-down economics on steroids. So the plan I have, I think, will actually produce greater opportunities. The plan he has will cost us jobs and possibly lead to another Great Recession.
Secretary, thank you. Mr. Trump, why will your plan create more jobs and growth than Secretary Clinton?
If
Well,
he starts
first of all,
off-
before I start on my plan, her plan is going to raise taxes and even double your taxes. Her tax plan is a disaster. And she can say all she wants about college tuition, and I'm a big proponent. We're going to do a lot of things for college tuition, but the rest of the public's going to be paying for it. We will have a massive, massive tax increase under Hillary Clinton's plan. But I'd like to start off where we left, because when I said Japan and Germany, and I'm not to single them out, but South Korea, these are very rich, powerful countries. Saudi Arabia,
What?
nothing but money.
But he's
We
talking about
protect
the
Saudi
economy,
Arabia.
though. What is he
Why
talking
aren't
about?
they paying? She immediately, when she heard this, I questioned it. And I questioned NATO. Why aren't the NATO questioned? Why aren't they paying? Because they weren't paying. Since I did this was a year ago, all of a sudden they're paying. And I've been given a lot of credit for it. All of a sudden they're starting to pay up. They have to pay up. We're protecting people. They have to pay up. And I'm a big fan of NATO, but they have to pay up. She comes out and said, we love our allies. We think our allies are great. Well, it's awfully hard to get them to pay up when you have somebody saying, we think how great they are. We have to tell Japan in a very nice way. We have to tell Germany, all of these countries, South Korea, we have to say, you have to help us out. We have, during his regime, during President Obama's regime, we've doubled our national debt. We're up to $20 trillion.
But he's not talking
So my
about
plan,
what
we're
his
going to
reform
renegotiate
is
trade
for
deals.
the
We're going to have a lot of free
economy,
trade. We're
man.
going to have
Like,
free trade, more free trade than we
that-
have right now.
the topic
But we
you're
have
talking
horrible
about is-
deals.
look.
Our jobs are being taken out by the deal that her husband signed, NAFTA, one of the worst deals ever.
Oh.
Our jobs are being sucked out of our economy. You look at all of the places that I just left. You go to Pennsylvania, you go to Ohio, you go to Florida, you go to any of them. You go upstate New York. Our jobs have fled to Mexico and other places. We're bringing our jobs back. I am going to renegotiate NAFTA. And if I can't make a great deal, then we're going to terminate NAFTA and we're going to create new deals. We're going to have trade, but we're going to terminate it. We're going to make a great trade deal. And if we can't, we're going to do it. We're going to go a separate way, because it has been a disaster. We are going to cut taxes massively. We're going to cut business taxes massively. They're going to start hiring people. We're going to bring the $2.5 trillion that's offshore back into the country. We are going to start the engine rolling again, because right now our country is dying at 1% GDP.
He said he
Well,
gonna
let me translate that if I can, Chris, because
take
you
from the
can't.
the
offshore
fact is
account.
he's going to advocate for the largest tax cuts we've ever seen, 3 times more than the tax cuts under the Bush administration. I have said repeatedly throughout this campaign, I will not raise taxes on anyone making $250,000 or less. I also will not add a penny to the debt. I have costed out what I'm going to do. He will, through his massive tax cuts, add $20 trillion to the debt. Well, he mentioned the debt. We know how to get control of the debt. When my husband was president, we went from a $300 billion deficit to a $200 billion surplus, and we were actually on the path to eliminating the national debt. When President Obama came into office, he inherited the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression. He has cut the deficit by 2/3. So,
Right.
yes, one of the ways you go after the debt, one of the ways you create jobs is by investing in people. So I do have investments in new jobs, investments in education, skill training, and the opportunities for people to get ahead and stay ahead. That's the kind of approach
Secretary.
that will work. cutting taxes on the wealthy, we've tried that.
Secretary-
It has not worked the way that it has been
Secretary
promised.
Clinton, I want to pursue your plan because in many ways it is similar to the Obama stimulus plan in 2009, which has led to the slowest GDP growth since 1949.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. You told me in July when we spoke that the problem is that President Obama didn't get to do enough in what he was trying to do with his stimulus. So is your plan basically even more of the Obama stimulus?
Well, it's a combination, Chris. And let me say that when you inherit the level of economic catastrophe that President Obama inherited, it was a real touch and go situation. I was in the Senate before I became Secretary of State. I've never seen people as physically distraught as the Bush administration team was because of what was happening to the economy. I personally believe that the steps that President Obama took saved the economy. He doesn't get the credit he deserves for taking some very hard positions. But it was a terrible recession. So now we've dug ourselves out of it. We're standing, but we're not yet running. So what I am proposing is that we invest from the middle out and the ground up, not the top down. That is not going to work. That's why what I have put forward doesn't add a penny to the debt, but it is the kind of approach that will enable more people to take those new jobs, higher paying jobs. We're beginning to see some increase in incomes, and we certainly have had a long string of increasing jobs. We've got to do more to get the whole economy moving, and that's what I believe I will be able to do.
Mr. Trump, even conservative economists who have looked at your plan say that the numbers don't add up, that your idea, and you've talked about 25 million jobs created, 4%
Over a 10-year period.
growth, is unrealistic. And they say, you talk a lot about growing the energy industry, they say with oil prices as low as they are right now, that's unrealistic as well. Your response?
So I just left some high representatives of India. They're growing at 8%. China is growing at 7%, and that for them is a catastrophically low number. We are growing. Our last report came out, and it's right around the 1% level, and I think it's going down. Last week, as you know, at the end of last week, they came out with an anemic jobs report, a terrible jobs report. In fact, I said, is that the last jobs report before the election? Because if it is, I should win easily. It was so bad. The report was so bad. Look, our country is stagnant. We've lost our jobs. We've lost our businesses. We're not making things anymore, relatively speaking. Our product is pouring in from China, pouring in from Vietnam, pouring in from all over the world.
I'm trying to
I've
focus.
visited so many communities. This has been such an incredible education for me, Chris.
From a non-
I've gotten to know so many. I've developed so many friends over the last year, and they cry when they see what's happened. I passed
I don't
factories
want
that
to put
were
my
thriving
personal
20,
perspective on
25
either one
years
of these
ago, and
people. I
because
want
of
to
the
listen to what
bill
they're
that
saying.
her husband signed and she blessed 100%. It is just horrible
And
what's
try to
happened to these
believe
people in these
either one of
communities. Now, she can say that her husband did well, but boy, did they suffer as NAFTA kicked in, because it didn't really kick in very much, but it kicked in after they left. Boy, did they suffer. That was one of the worst things that's ever been signed by our country. Now she wants to sign Trans-Pacific Partnership, and she wants it. She lied when she said she didn't call it the gold standard in one of the debates. She totally lied. She did call it the gold standard, and they actually fact-checked, and they said I was right. I was so
I want to give you a chance to briefly speak to that, then I want to pivot to 1/6
And
of
that
the
will be as
economy,
bad as NAFTA.
which is Obamacare. But go ahead,
Well,
briefly.
First, let me say, number one, when I saw the final agreement for TPP, I said I was against it. It didn't meet my tests. I've had the same tests. Does it create jobs, raise incomes, and further our national security? I'm against it now. I'll be against it after the election. I'll be against it when I'm president. There's not one of us on this stage who's actually shipped jobs to Mexico, because that's Donald. He's shipped jobs to 12 countries, including Mexico. But he mentioned China. And, you know, one of the biggest problems we have with China is the illegal dumping of steel and aluminum into our markets. I have fought against that as a senator. I've stood up against it as Secretary of State. Donald has bought Chinese steel and aluminum. In fact, the Trump hotel right here in Las Vegas was made with Chinese steel. So he goes around with crocodile tears about how terrible it is.
This is
But he
such
has
a-
given jobs to Chinese steel workers, not American steel workers.
Trump?
That's the kind of
Well, let me
approach
just say-
that
let me
is
just
just
say.
not going to work.
It
We're going to
just-
pull the country together. We're going to have trade agreements that we enforce. That's why I'm going
Look
to
at
have
Hillary
a
stepping
trade
up.
prosecutor for the first time in history. And we're going to enforce those agreements. And we're going to look for businesses to
Secretary
help
Clinton.
us by buying American products.
Go ahead,
I
Mr.
ask
Trump.
a simple question. She's been doing this for 30 years. Why the hell didn't you do it over the last 15, 20 years? You
No,
were
I
very
voted-
much involved, excuse me, my turn. You were very much involved in every aspect of this country, very much. And you do have experience. I'd say the one thing you have over me is experience, but it's bad experience because what you've done has turned out badly. For 30 years, you've been in a position to help. And if you say that I use steel or I use something else, I make it impossible for me to do that. I wouldn't mind. The problem is you talk, but you don't get anything done, Hillary. You don't. Just like when you ran the State Department, $6 billion was missing. How do you miss $6 billion?
Uh-oh.
You ran the State Department. $6 billion was either stolen. They don't know. It's
Uh-oh.
gone. $6 billion.
Uh-oh.
If you become
Man,
president,
she looks...
this country is going to be in some mess. Believe me.
I don't know if I want to
First of
upload
all,
this, y'all.
what he just said about the State Department is not only untrue, it's been debunked numerous times. But I think it's really an important issue. He raised the 30 years of experience. So let me just talk briefly about that.
Uh-oh.
You know, back in the 1970s, I worked for the Children's Defense Fund, and I was taking on discrimination against African American kids in schools. He was getting sued by the Justice Department for racial discrimination in his apartment buildings. In the 1980s, I was working to reform the schools in Arkansas. He was borrowing $14 million from his father to start his businesses. In the 1990s, I went to Beijing.
What did he
and I
say?
said women's rights
Whoa.
are human
I
rights.
couldn't tell what he-
He insulted a former Miss Universe, Alicia Machado, called her an eating machine.
Give me a-
And on the day when I was in the Situation Room, monitoring the raid that brought Osama bin Laden to justice, he was hosting the Celebrity Apprentice. So I'm happy to compare my 30 years of experience, what I've done for this country, trying to help in every way I could, especially kids and families, get ahead and stay ahead with your 30 years, and I'll let the American people make that decision.
Well, I
Wow.
think I did a much better job. I built a massive company, a great company, some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world, worth many, many billions of dollars. I started with a $1 million loan. I agree with that. It's a $1 million loan, but I built a phenomenal company. And if we could run our country the way I've run my company, we would have a country that you would be so proud of. You would even be proud of it. And frankly, when you look at her real record, take a look at Syria, take a look at the migration, take a look at Libya, take a look at Iraq. She gave us ISIS because her and Obama created this huge vacuum. And a small group came out of that huge vacuum because we should have never been in Iraq, but once we were there, we should have never got out the way they wanted to get out. She gave us ISIS as sure as you are sitting there. And what happened is now ISIS is in 32 countries. And now I listen how she's going to get rid of ISIS. She's going to get rid of nobody.
All right, we are going to get
snap.
to foreign
I
hotspots
was,
in a few moments.
that
But
was
the next
straight.
segment is fitness to be president of the United States. Mr. Trump, at the
I
last
really can't say
debate,
anything on that one.
you said your talk
This is
about
gonna be
robbing women
vicious,
was just that,
and
talk,
this is like
and that you've never actually done it. And since
some
then,
of these
as
words,
we all
man,
know,
and hate.
9 women
This
have
is
come
ungodly,
forward and
man.
said that
Like,
you
real
either
talk.
broke them or kissed them
I
without
don't
their
even
consent.
know. Man, I just know we need to pray for our country.
Why
man.
would so many different
Uh-oh.
women from so many
Uh-oh.
different circumstances over so many different years, why would they all in this last couple of weeks
Uh-oh.
make up? You deny this. Why would they all make up these stories? And since this is a question
No.
for both of you, Secretary Clinton, Mr. Trump says what your husband did and that you defended was even worse. Mr. Trump, you go first.
Well, first of all,
Oh my
those stories
gosh.
have been largely debunked. Those people, I don't know those people. I have a feeling how they came. I believe it was her campaign that did it. Just
Oh
like
my
if you look at
goodness.
what came out today on the clips, where I was wondering what happened with my rally in Chicago and other rallies where we had such violence. She's the one in Obama that caused the violence. They hired people They paid them $1,500, and they're on tape saying, be violent, cause fights, do bad things. I would say the only way, because those stories are all totally false. I have to say that. And I didn't even apologize to my wife, who's sitting right here, because I didn't do anything. I didn't know any of these women. I didn't see these women. These women, the woman on the plane, the woman, I think they want either fame or her campaign did it. And I think it's her campaign, because what I saw, what they did, which is a criminal act, by the way, where they're telling people to go out and start fistfights and start violence. And I'll tell you what,
Oh,
in
come
particular in Chicago,
on, bro.
people were hurt and people
I mean,
could
but
have been killed
what, you
in that
can't.
riot. And that was
okay.
not
All right, I gotta
tape,
disagree on this
started
one
by her. I
because
believe,
you can't
Chris,
have a rally
that
and
she
this
got
violence,
these
pro-violence
people
is
to step
happening, and
forward.
you're
If it
enabling
wasn't,
it,
they
and that's
get
not
their
a
10
problem.
minutes of fame.
And you're not
But
admitting to
they
that,
were
but then
all
you're gonna
totally,
like.
it was all fiction. It was lies.
You can't
and
have
it
your
was
cake and
fiction.
eat it too. I mean, at least go and
Well,
say.
Secretary Clinton.
At the last debate,
Whatever, man.
we heard Donald talking about what he
Oh Lord.
did to women. And after that, a number of women have come forward saying that's exactly what he did to them. Now, what was his response? Well, he held a number of big rallies where he said that he could not possibly have done those things to those women because they were not attractive enough for
I did
them
not say
to be
that.
assaulted.
I did not say that.
In fact, he went on
What?
to say,
Her 2 minutes, sir. Her 2 minutes.
but did
He-
not say that.
It's her 2 minutes.
he went on to say, look at her. I don't think so. About another woman, he said, that wouldn't be my first choice. He attacked the woman reporter writing the story, called her disgusting, as he has called a number of women during this campaign. You know, Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. He goes after their dignity, their self-worth, and I don't think there is a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like. So we now know what Donald thinks and what he says and how he acts toward women. That's who Donald is. I think it's really up to all of us to demonstrate who we are and who our country is, and to stand up and be very clear about what we expect from our next president, how we want to bring our country together, where we don't want to have the kind of pitting of people one against the other, where instead we celebrate our diversity, we lift people up, and we make our country even greater. America is great because America is good. And it really is up to all of us to make that true now and in the future, and particularly for our children and our grandchildren.
She did have a
Mr.
tax.
Trump,
She could have went
Nobody
all
has
in.
more respect for women than I do. Nobody. Nobody has more respect.
Please, everybody.
And frankly, those stories have been largely debunked. And I really want to just talk about something slightly different. She
Oh,
mentions this,
Oh no.
which
I
is
mean,
all fiction.
she
All
didn't
fiction.
go at him though.
Probably or possibly started by her and her very sleazy campaign.
Wow.
But I will tell you, what isn't fictionalized are her emails, where she destroyed 33,000 emails criminally, after getting a subpoena from the United States Congress. What happened to the FBI? I don't know. We have a great general, 4-star general, today.
Whoa.
You read it in all the papers, going to potentially serve 5 years in jail for lying to the FBI. One lie. She's lied hundreds of times to the people, to Congress, and to the FBI. He's going to probably go to jail. This is a 4-star general, and she gets away with it, and she can run for the presidency of the United States. That's really what you should be talking about, not fiction, where somebody wants fame or where they come out of her crooked campaign.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, every time Donald is pushed on something which is obviously uncomfortable, like what these women are saying, he immediately goes to denying responsibility. And it's not just about women. He never apologizes or says he's sorry for anything. So we know what he has said and what he's done to women. But he also went after a disabled reporter, mocked and mimicked him on
Wrong.
national television. He went after Mr. and Mrs. Khan, the parents of a young man who died serving our country, a Gold Star family because of their religion. He went after John McCain, a prisoner
it was
of
gonna
war,
go
said
to
he
both
prefers
fights.
people who aren't captured. He went after a federal judge born in Indiana, but who Donald said couldn't be trusted to try the fraud and racketeering case against Trump University because his parents were Mexican. So it's not one thing. This is a pattern of divisiveness, of a very dark and in many ways dangerous vision of our country, where he incites violence, where he applauds people who are pushing and pulling and punching at his rallies. That is not who America is. And I hope that as we move in the last weeks of this campaign, more and more people will understand what's at stake in this election. It really does come down to what kind of country we are going to have.
So sad when she talks about violence at my rallies, and she caused the violence. It's on tape. The other things are false, but honestly, I'd love to talk about getting rid of ISIS, and I'd love to talk about other things.
Okay.
But those other charges, as she knows, are false.
In this bucket about fitness to be president, there's been a lot of developments over the last 10 days since the last debate.
Lord.
I'd like to ask you about them. These are questions that the American people have. Secretary Clinton,
This whole
during
dude,
the
I don't know if y'all
2009
can
Senate
tell.
confirmation hearing,
This
you
whole
promised
debate
to
is the
avoid
most
even the
draining,
appearance of a conflict
horrid
of interest
thing I think I've
when you were
seen.
dealing with the
in a
Clinton
long
Foundation
time.
while you were
I don't know if I
Secretary
can
of State.
react
The
anymore,
emails
you
show
guys.
that
I think I
donors
might be
got
done.
special access to you. Those seeking
wanna go look at
grants
the
for
Guardians of
Haiti
the Galaxy.
relief were considered
Training.
separately from non-donors, and some of those donors got government contracts, taxpayer money. Can you really say that you kept your pledge to that Senate committee, and why isn't what happened and what went on between you and the Clinton Foundation, why isn't it what Mr. Trump calls pay to play?
Well, everything I did as Secretary of State was in furtherance of our country's interests and our values. The State Department has said that. I think that's been proven. But I am happy. In fact, I'm thrilled to talk about the Clinton Foundation because it is a world-renowned charity. And I am so proud of the work that it does. You know, I could talk for the rest of the debate. I know I don't have the time to do that. But just briefly, the Clinton Foundation made it possible for 11 million people around the world with HIV/AIDS to afford treatment. And that's about half of all the people in the world who are getting treatment. In partnership with the American Health Association, we have made environments in schools healthier for kids,
Secretary
including
Clinton,
healthier lunches.
respectfully, this is an open discussion.
Well, it is an open discussion.
I understand, and the specific question went to pay for play. Do you want to talk about that?
But there is no evidence. But there is a lot of evidence about the very good work
and it's a
and the
criminal
high
enterprise,
rankings that
and
the
so many
Please let
people know
Mr.
it.
Trump speak.
It's a
Foundation got
criminal
for their work.
enterprise.
This is bad.
Saudi Arabia giving $25 million, Qatar, all of these countries. You talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off buildings. These are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take their money. So I'd like to ask you right now, why don't you give back the money that you've taken from certain countries that treat certain groups of people so horribly? Why don't you give back the money? I think it would be a great gesture.
Well-
because she takes a tremendous amount of money, and you take a look at the people of Haiti. I was at a little Haiti the other day in Florida, and I want to tell you, they hate the Clintons because what's happened in Haiti with the Clinton Foundation is a disgrace. And you know it, and they know it, and everybody knows it.
Well, very quickly, we at the Clinton Foundation spend 90% of all the money that is donated on behalf of programs of people around the world and in our own country. I'm very proud of that. We have the highest rating from the watchdogs that follow foundations, and I'd be happy to compare what we do with the Trump Foundation, which took money from other people and bought a 6-foot portrait of Donald. Who does that? It just was astonishing. But when it comes to Haiti, Haiti is the poorest country in our hemisphere. The earthquake and the hurricanes, it has devastated Haiti. Bill and I have been involved in trying to help Haiti for many years. The Clinton Foundation raised $30 million to help Haiti after the catastrophic earthquake, and all of the terrible problems the people there had. We've done things to help small businesses, agriculture,
I'm
and so
telling
much
y'all,
else.
man, I
And
can't
we're going
do
to
it,
keep
man.
working to help Haiti because
This is just-
it's an important part.
I'm
of
thinking,
I wanna-
how
I
did
don't
we
want you
get
to help
here?
them anymore.
I'd
I'd like to mention one thing. Trump Foundation, small foundation. People contribute. I contribute. The money goes 100% goes to different charities, including a lot of military. I don't get anything. I don't buy boats. I don't buy planes. What happens is
Wasn't
the money
some of
goes
the
out.
money, wasn't some of the money used to settle your lawsuit, sir?
Oh,
No, it was, we put up the American flag, and that's it. They put up the American flag. We fought for the right in Palm Beach to put up the American flag.
There was a penalty that was imposed by Palm Beach County.
There
and the money
was,
came
there
from
was,
your
and
foundation
by the way, the money,
instead of Mar-a-Lago
the money
yourself,
went to
sir.
Fisher House, where they build houses. The money that you're talking about went to Fisher House, where they build houses for veterans and disabled.
I want to get into one
But of
last.
course, there's no way we can know whether any of that is true because he hasn't released his tax returns. He is the
Oh,
first candidate ever to run
no.
for president in the last
Hillary, that was
40 plus
low.
years who has not
That
released
was
his
a
tax
low.
returns. So everything he says about charity or anything else, we can't prove it. You can look at our tax returns. We've got them all out there. But what is really troubling is that we learned in the last debate he has not paid a penny in federal income tax. And we were talking about immigrants a few minutes ago.
I
Chris.
see. Y'all
You know,
wasn't here for
half of all immigrants, undocumented immigrants in our country, actually pay federal income tax. So we have undocumented immigrants in America who are paying more federal income tax than a billionaire.
I
find
So
that
let me just tell you very
astonishing.
simply, we're entitled, because of the laws that people like her pass, to take massive amounts of depreciation and other charges, and we do it. And all of her donors, just about all of them, I know Buffett took
just
hundreds of millions of
admitted
dollars. George Soros, took hundreds of millions of dollars. Let me just explain.
Wait,
All of her donors, most of her donors
Mr. Trump,
have done the same thing as I did.
Okay.
Well,
And you know what you should have done?
Folks, we heard
And
this.
you know, Hillary, what you should have done? You should have changed the law when you were a United States Senator. If you
Folks,
don't
we
like
heard
it.
this.
Yeah.
Because your donors and your special interests are doing the same thing as I do, except even more so.
Well,
you
you know-
should have changed the law, but you won't change the law because you take in so much money. I mean, I sat in my apartment today in a very beautiful hotel down the street, known as
Made with Chinese steel.
But I will tell you, I sat there watching ad after ad after ad, false ad, all paid for by your friends on Wall Street that gave so much money because they know you're going to protect
They
them.
ain't even letting
And
the
frankly,
Q monitor talk
You
anymore.
should have changed
Mr.
the laws.
Trump.
If you don't like what I did, you should have changed the law.
Mr. Trump, I want to ask you about one last question in this topic. You have been warning at rallies recently that this election is rigged and that Hillary Clinton is in the process of trying to steal it from you.
Uh-oh.
Your
Well-
running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But sir, there's
If you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see
Man, this is like hurt my
millions of
neck.
people that are
Watching
registered
this.
to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So, let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run. And just in that respect,
Why is he
I
whining
say
about this? I
it's
mean,
rigged.
y'all are
Because she
extra.
should never, Tris, she should never have been allowed to run for the presidency based on what she did with emails and so many other things.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country. In fact, one of the prides of this country is the peaceful transition of power, and that no matter how hard fought a campaign is, that at the end of the campaign,
That's it.
that the loser concedes to the winner. Not saying that you're necessarily going to be the loser or the winner, but that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country.
Yep.
Are you saying you're not prepared now to
What
commit
I'm
to that
saying
principle?
is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. The FBI conducted a year-long investigation into my emails. They concluded there was no case. He said the FBI was rigged. He lost the Iowa caucus. He lost the Wisconsin primary. He said the Republican primary was rigged against him. Then Trump University gets sued for fraud and racketeering. He claims the court system and the federal judge is rigged against him. There was even a time when he
hurt my
didn't get
neck.
an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against
Should have
him.
gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. And that is what must be expected of anyone standing on a debate stage during a general election. You know, President Obama said the other day, when you're whining before the game is even finished, it just shows you're not up to doing the job. And let's be clear about what he is saying and what that means. He is denigrating, he's talking down our democracy.
Man, I can't watch anymore, y'all.
For one, am
I'm
appalled
done. My neck
that
is
somebody
hurting.
who
This is
is the
stressful.
nominee of one of our two major
is
parties
hate-filled.
would take that kind of position.
I think what the FBI did and what the Department of Justice did, including meeting with her husband,
I
the
can't.
Attorney
I'm
General,
done,
on
y'all.
an
Look.
airplane on the tarmac
Look, hear
in
me.
Arizona.
I said this
I think
before,
it's disgraceful.
all right?
I think it's a disgrace.
and I'll say it
I think
again.
We've never had a situation.
I know y'all can't see me. We need to pray for our leaders. We need to pray for our country. And Lord God, please save us.
If they are
Help us come in the gap, govern our minds accordingly to who we need to vote for, because none of this is good. None of this is edifying in my spirit. I'm done. I'm out. STL 0320, representing JVS. I'm gone. Peace.